pasteurizing milk. You warp and distort the protein. Same thing happens when you extrude.
Where's all the fat in a vegetarian diet? Right, we've got some in seeds and we have some in nuts. But that doesn't have any of the animal fats. EPA and DHA, which are two of the most important omega-3s, are animal fats. Your body may or may not convert them from something else. They're animal fats. They're not there. So almost everybody that's on a vegetarian diet, the only way they're even getting adequate amounts of some of the wrong fats is if they're pouring them on. They're certainly not getting them naturally, because natural fats are only in high quantities, percentages, in animal foods and in some nuts and seeds.
And then there are many nutrients that they're in the plants, but they're much harder to absorb from the plants, starting with calcium. Now, in traditional diets, there were really only two sources of calcium. Either dairy foods, milk, cheese, and so forth, or bones. And cultures that did not have dairy foods made a point of eating bones. The Eskimos ate the fermented bones. They would take the bones of small animals like birds and grind them up and put them in their food. So it was either dairy foods or bones. They were not getting their calcium from vegetables. A lot of the calcium in vegetables is blocked by things like oxalic acid or phytic acid. B6, magnesium, iron, zinc, and copper, all very crucial nutrients. They are in plant foods, but they're often blocked. They're often difficult to absorb, particularly zinc. The quickest way to develop a zinc deficiency is just eat a vegan diet, because you cannot obtain adequate zinc from plant foods. And zinc is critical for not only for our brains, but for reproduction. Over 100 enzymes are dependent on zinc.
People who eat the most fat and the most cholesterol have the lowest incidence of disease, all disease. The higher your cholesterol level in your blood, the healthier you are altogether. That's what science has demonstrated conclusively. People with higher cholesterol live the longest and the healthiest lives. People who are in their 90s, 80s, and people who reach 100 usually have high blood cholesterol. And they eat eggs and bacon and butter for breakfast on a daily basis, these people, almost, exclusively.
Because so many women are concerned about too much saturated fat in daily meals, a great change in eating habits is taking place in homes all over America. More and more women are using both Mazola corn oil and Mazola margarine. Less saturated fat because its corn oil is never hydrogenated. A delicious spread and a nutritious seasoning for vegetables, Mazola margarine is the only margarine to contain Mazola corn oil.
So, if you're concerned about too much saturated fat...
Let's talk about low blood cholesterol. It increases risk of heart disease and stroke. That is a fact. If you have low blood cholesterol, you will have high risk of heart disease and strokes. That is an absolute fact. It is associated with cancer. People who have low blood cholesterol have it low for about 18 years before they're usually diagnosed with cancer. That is the number that's been given to us by science. It is associated with violence, aggression, and suicide. We'll talk more about the brain, but what you have to understand, the brain is a fatty organ. It's got a high fat content, the brain. About 40% of that fat is cholesterol. Your brain is made from cholesterol, 40% of it. The substance called myelin coats every nerve fiber and every nerve cell in your nervous system, in your brain, in your spine, in the peripheral nervous system. It's like an insulation around electric wires. You know that electricity, all electric wires have to be insulated? Our brain works on electricity. So that's the insulation. Myelin, more than 60% of it is cholesterol. The rest is saturated fat. That is what myelin is. So when you start reducing blood cholesterol levels, you're putting brain under grave danger. Because brain has cell regeneration processes going on all the time. Cells in the brain do die, and they get replaced by newly born cells. These processes are very active. And these new baby cells need building materials to be made from. They have to be made from cholesterol, saturated fats, proteins, glyconutrients, and some other things, but a large percent is fat and cholesterol. And if the blood cholesterol is low, the brain is not getting enough to maintain its structure and to function properly.
Scoop it in a baked potato. Spice it up with salsa. Swirl it in pasta.
Oh, I've got a meeting.
Meeting? You've got a floor to wax.
Me?
Newton low-fat cottage cheese. Now it comes in 4 packs.
I found a recipe you won't find in a cookbook, but it's sure nutritious and a real money saver, too. Take a quart of Carnation Instant Non-Fat Dry Milk. Add a quart of whole milk. Mix, chill, and serve. You get 2 quarts of fresh-tasting low-fat milk.
People with low blood cholesterol have aggressive personalities and poor self-control. Carl Pfeiffer, a renowned American doctor who did research in American prisons, has discovered that more than 80% of violent offenders, people who committed murder and other violent crimes, had low blood cholesterol. More than 85%. Low blood cholesterol makes the brain starve, the brain cannot function well, the person becomes angry, these people are easily irritated, they easily attack, they easily become aggressive, and they are prone to violence and crime. It is associated with Parkinson's disease. Indeed, now we know that statins cause Parkinson's disease. We have an epidemic of Parkinson's disease. It's growing very rapidly. Without doubt, large percent of that epidemic is due to anti-cholesterol pills that people are taking. Because the brain is a fatty organ, it requires cholesterol. And if it doesn't get enough, it will manifest symptoms. It is associated with memory loss. In fact, memory loss is the #1 side effect of statin drugs. The brain cannot function, you can't remember anything. Because in order to form memories in the brain, synapses have to be formed. The cells in the brain have long arms. They grow long arms to communicate with each other. And when the 2 arms of 2 cells come together, they have to do this. They have to create a synapse here and a synapse here, and they have to connect. Now, the synapses are almost exclusively made out of cholesterol and saturated fat. If your blood cholesterol is low, that is the only place your brain can get cholesterol from. It can manufacture some, but not enough. Then the brain can't form these synapses. So the cells cannot connect with each other. As a result, the person cannot create memories. And it is the short-term memory that suffers. The person might remember what happened in the childhood, because those synapses were formed in the childhood, but he doesn't remember what he had for breakfast, and where he put his car keys, or where he left his hat, or his shoes, or something else. The short-term memory is not being formed, because the brain doesn't have enough building materials, resources, to create memories. These people can't learn anything new, because in order to learn something, we have to remember it. We can't form memory.
I can't believe I used to swing over those rocks. Took some foolish risks as a teenager. But I was still taking a foolish risk with my cholesterol. Anyone with high cholesterol may be at increased risk of heart attack. Diet and exercise weren't enough for me. I stopped kidding myself. I've been eating healthier, exercising more, and now I'm also taking Lipitor. If you've been kidding yourself about high cholesterol, stop. Along with diet, Lipitor has been shown to lower bad cholesterol 39 to 60%. Lipitor is FDA approved to reduce the risk of heart attack and stroke in patients who have heart disease or risk factors for heart disease.
Lipitor is not for everyone, including people with liver problems and women who are nursing, pregnant, or may become pregnant.
I had a heart attack at 57. My doctor told me I should have been doing more for my high cholesterol. What was I thinking? But now, I trust my heart to Lipitor.
When diet and exercise are not enough, adding Lipitor may help. Unlike some other cholesterol-lowering medications, Lipitor is FDA approved to reduce the risk of heart attack, stroke, and certain kinds of heart surgeries if you have several common risk factors or heart disease. Lipitor has been extensively studied with over 16 years of research.
We have an epidemic of Alzheimer's disease. Western governments are in absolute panic because it is a terrible epidemic and it's like an avalanche coming onto humanity. Alzheimer's disease, dementia. Vast percent of that epidemic is due to statins, because every one of these people are taking these drugs. The brain is starving. It cannot form synapses. As a result, the person cannot learn anything, cannot remember anything, and develops Alzheimer's disease. It is associated with poor immunity, because our immune cells are high-fat cells. Large percent of the cell membrane and the membranes inside the cell, which form organelles, are made out of cholesterol and saturated fat. And immune cells live a very short life, only a few days, many of them. And when there is any infection in the body, there's a fight going on, many of them die. So your bone marrow has to work very hard to give birth to new baby cells, immune cells, because all your immune cells are born in the bone marrow. Bone marrow is a high cholesterol organ. It has a very high composition of cholesterol. And again, most of that cholesterol comes to your bone marrow from the blood. If you have a low level of cholesterol in your blood, your bone marrow is starving. It cannot manufacture immune cells, blood cells, and many other cells. As a result, you become prone to infections. Western governments are all running around with these hospital infections, MRSA. You've heard of that, haven't you? That hospital infections have become a big problem. Why? Because every patient in these hospitals older than 40 is on statins. They have reduced their cholesterol level in the blood. They are unable to fight infections. In order to fight an infection, we need LDL cholesterol. That is a major, major part of any fight with any infection in the blood. Your immune system requires large amounts of LDL cholesterol. And what are they doing? They're giving them statins. LDL cholesterol is low. The person cannot fight any infection. They're completely defenseless, these patients. That is why we have hospital infections. That is a major, major cause of it.
Because of high cholesterol, 1 out of 4 adults is gambling with heart disease. You could leave it to chance or do something about it with a diet including Fleischmann's margarine. 0 cholesterol, low saturated fat.
For great bacony crunch without cholesterol, bring home the Bacos.
Learning disabilities in children and adults, without doubt. Mother's breast milk is very rich in cholesterol. It has a high content of cholesterol. More than that, it has an enzyme in it to make sure that the baby's digestive system absorbs 100% of that cholesterol. Not one molecule of it gets wasted when babies are breastfeeding. Why? Because the baby's brain and eyes and bone marrow and other high-fat organs require large amounts of cholesterol to form themselves properly. Manufacturers of formula feed for babies know this fact. But because of all the propaganda with cholesterol, they don't put any cholesterol in formulas. That is why it is a very high rate amongst formula-fed babies. They have a very high percentage of poor ability to learn, lower intelligence, problems with behavior, and glasses. They have poor eyesight because their eyes didn't form properly in these children. And infections as well, because bone marrow is not being properly formed. It is associated with early death. People with low blood cholesterol don't live long. They die early.
Every diet contained animal foods. This was Dr. Price's greatest disappointment. He had hoped to find a culture where they were only eating plant foods and that was healthy. And he did not find this, and he admitted that he was wrong. they went to great risk to obtain the animal foods, great effort and risk to obtain the animal food.